Christian discipleship is a call to a higher standard of living and loving, possessing the mind of Christ as presented in his Sermon on the Mount. A Moment to Remember is a very beautiful Korean love story. It is a story of a young couple who fall in love with each other and get married. After the fun and frolic of youthful love, tragedy strikes the family. They come to know that the girl was having an early onset of Alzheimer's disease. The boy was disappointed and sad. Despite his grief, he decides to remain at his wife's side. He continues to love her even when she was not able to remember him. There is a beautiful scene in which the boy comes to serve her with his dark eyeglasses. He wanted to hide his eyes behind the sunglasses so that she would not see his tears. He goes out of his way to love her even when he knows that she is not able to love him in return. This is a higher level of loving. Jesus teaches us high standards of living and loving. The Sermon on the Mount is an invitation to possess the mind of Christ. Possessing the mind of Christ would mean setting high standards for our lives. In the Gospel according to St. Mathew chapter 5 verses 17 onwards, in his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus demands this standard of living by practicing harmony in relationships, purity in sexuality, faithfulness in marriage, and truth in speech. He said, "Whoever is angry with his brother is liable to judgment." In Jesus, we are not just trying to control our desires, but we crucify them with Jesus. He goes to the extent of telling us to destroy our bodies rather than to look lustfully at someone. Jesus wants not just self-improvement, but self-denial. His concern is rebirth. He does not make us better, but he wants to make us totally new. For Jesus, the whole moral value of any legal observance does not come from the law itself, but it comes from an interior disposition. This disposition is one of loving relationship. Jesus said, "I have come not to abolish the law or the prophets, but to fulfill them." The interior disposition is to rise above the normal human law that the scribes and Pharisees taught. That is why Jesus said, "Unless our righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." Jesus goes far beyond the 10 Commandments, the law of Moses, to a supreme form of loving, which is love at all costs. The book of Sirach speaks about free will. It also insists on responsibility. In the book of Sirach, chapter 15, verse 15, we read, "If you desire, you will keep the commandments, and to act faithfully is a matter of choice." St. Paul, writing to the Corinthians, makes a distinction between human wisdom and the wisdom of God. In his first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 2, verse 7, Paul says, "We speak God's wisdom, secret and hidden, which God decreed before the ages for our glory." The wisdom of God is much higher than human wisdom. This is the standard set out for a Christian disciple. These standards may be humanly impossible. The letter of St. James we read, "But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere." Earthly wisdom looks at laws. God's wisdom is full of love. Earthly wisdom seeks justice and punishment. God's wisdom gives forgiveness. Earthly wisdom is self-centered, while God's wisdom is self-giving. Earthly wisdom tells us to love our family and friends. God's wisdom tells us to love our enemies. And most importantly, God's wisdom gives us focus and direction when we have to choose between what looks good, what feels good, and what is really good. That is what it means to live by God's standards. Let us seek to possess the mind of Christ, raising our standards of loving and living. Let us proclaim with the psalmist, "Blessed are they who walk in the way of the Lord."